Okay. Good morning, everyone. We will let a bit of time for the people to connect, as I see that we have more participants joining by the minute. So maybe I will let one very small minute and then we can start this webinar. All right, it seems to be stabilized, so we can start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar from the DHC Plus platform on digitalization in district heating and cooling systems, the utility perspective. I am Aurélie Beauvais, the Managing Director of Euroheat and Power, and it is my pleasure to moderate the webinar today. We will be presenting at this occasion a report on digitalization, which was developed by our DHC Plus technology platform. It's been a very thorough process, broad membership survey. We will tell you everything about it later. But what we can say is that the topic is extremely relevant at this point in time for the sector. While our sector is growing, our sector is decarbonizing and is getting more complex with a broader diversity of energy input, flexibility needs, and also various interlinkages in between sectors. So there is a new demand for digitalization. There is a new era also in terms of the solutions that are available to digitalize district heating and cooling. And today we will explore all the opportunities that we can grasp from further digitalizing district heating and cooling, but also hear from our expert, our utilities, about the challenges potentially on the implementation, but mostly the benefits that they can recover from it. To do that, we are very lucky to have a great lineup of speakers and experts with us today. So we will start with an introduction, a keynote speech from Matteo Pozzi, which is the CEO of Optit, but also the Vice Chairman and DHC Plus, and in charge of coordinating the activities of our digitalization working group. So hello, Matteo. Nice to have you here.
Hi, thank you very much for the introduction.
It's a pleasure. And then after the presentation of Matteo, we will engage into a series of discussion and presentation with our other panelists. So we have here with us Bertrand Guillemot, which is Program Director of Dalkia. Hi, Bertrand.
Hi, everybody. I'm very proud to be there today and try to explain what digitalization will help us in a climate change fight.
We're very happy to have you too, Bertrand. Hi also to Ines Lindmeyer, Project Manager at Wind Energy. Ines, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too. I'm on the phone.
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, great.
Great to have
Hello,
you here.
everybody.
Hello, Ines. We have also Tom Digit, Distribution Manager at VBOG Heat. Hi, Tom.
Hi, I'm also happy to be here today. Looking forward to present some of demand side digitalization later on.
Same here, looking forward to it. And the last but not the least, Daniele Pasinelli, which is DHC Innovation Manager at A2A from Italy. Hi, Daniele.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and speaking about digitalization in our company. Mainly, we speak about digitalization on the generation side more than on heat demand side. Thank you.
Yes. Great. Looking forward to it. So to our audience here today, Zoom is a pretty easy tool to use. So you know that you have a chat where you can ask all your questions. We have saved some time at the end of this webinar to have a proper Q&A exchange directly between you and the speakers. Nevertheless, if during the presentations and the discussion you have a very pressing question to ask to our speakers, please write it in the chat. We will be looking into it and we will try to incorporate those during the conversation. So without further ado, I think now we have raised expectations and we need to deliver. And let's first have a look at what we'll be talking about simply today. So what are we talking about? What is digitalization in district heating and cooling? What about this report that we have produced? The key findings, maybe. Matteo, up to you to introduce that to our audience.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think you've already said who I am. I work in a digital solution company in Italy, but I'm also here as vice chairman and coordinator of the working group on digitalization, which really is responsible for what we're discussing today. I think most of the people in this virtual room will already know the DHC Plus platform. But for the few of you who may not remind it, be aware that this is the it's a Euroheat empowers hub for research and innovation in district heating and cooling. And it gathers parties that are interested in advancing knowledge and transferring best practices, participate and contribute to the advocacy and communication of and image raising campaign of DHC as a sustainable technology at European level and beyond. And I would say most importantly, it's a means of getting together, networking, matchmaking in order to initiate and conduct projects and ensure that this project can then be replicated and scale up to achieve maximum impacts. So the digitalization is not a recent issue in district heating and cooling. I would say that the work of the working group before I actually joined the vice chair position, and in July 2019, a very good digital roadmap was issued by the same working group, and it spans across the whole value chain, across several decision and data science issues on how to leverage on data to increase performance. And be assured, almost virtually everything that is in that document is still valid. It is funny that in the same year, also the Joint Research Center from the European Commission also issued a similar report to say that at the time, the digital buzzword was becoming important. So when we got together and we asked ourselves what could be done in order to do something which is actually today, and we felt the urge to monitor the situation, to understand what is the status of digitalization and what is most important and compelling for the users and producers of digitalization. And we thought that a good way to do it was actually to ask the players in the value chain about this. So we organized two parallel surveys, one on the supply side targeting digital solution providers. So those parties who develop and studied, define and develop solutions, digital solutions. And I would say that we had a good number of very qualified contributions from across Europe and beyond. At the same time, we also defined a survey targeting district heating and cooling utilities, so the users of digitalization. And let me say, the results were interesting, but maybe not entirely up to the expectations, because only 13 contributions were received, which of course is a very small number with respect to the number of players that we can count in across the European markets. Nevertheless, this exercise allowed us to understand a good number of things. The first one is that on the supply side, we believe, and we've got the impression that there is a significant number of qualified market players, digital solution providers, but also large utilities that are developing their own in-house tools that are reaching some level of maturity. This is particularly true in some areas of the value chain, and for sure the largest untapped potential is at the level of the building and the user side. Nevertheless, sometimes communication and the capacity to communicate impacts of digitalization is still a bit of a gap. On the demand side, the small number of responses maybe showed us that in spite of digitalization being seen as a means to deal with complexity, maybe it is either not yet on top of the list of priorities, or more simply, and this may go back to the way that the survey was constructed, it is difficult to find a real ownership within companies when it comes to digitalization, which really is spread across many functions. So maybe the survey was just a bit complex to fill out. Nevertheless, it is obvious that digitalization is important, but companies are maybe struggling to really perceive the real impact, the cost-benefit balance of digital heat. So if this is the status, the focus of the document that we then developed with the contribution of many companies, solution providers, last end users, etc., was something which had to be inspirational, with the objective to bridge the gap between a perceived or sometimes silent demand and the capacity of the market to actually provide interesting solutions to increase performance. The document is in the Knowledge Hub. It is free to download, and I would definitely urge you to do it and have a good read, because it is something that matters today. I don't want to spoil your read, but let me just say that we may all agree that district heating and cooling today is more and more a solution to enable decarbonization. And the way this is being achieved is through dealing with increasing complexity. This complexity requires something that goes beyond manual or experience of how, I mean, companies have been working in the past years. And in fact, there is a large number of decision-making processes, both at strategic and design level and ongoing operations, that can be supported very efficiently by digitalization. The highest impacts that are achieved if the whole value chain is looked at a glance, and there is lots of untapped potential almost virtually in every organization, because it's difficult to really cover the complexity of it, but there are the means to do it. And we think that the good news is that it doesn't matter where you are in the maturity level of digital tools and digital innovation, you're always at the right level to start. So in a way, the so what is there is an opportunity for you to increase the performance by entering the digital world, if you haven't already done so, or improve the capacity of achieving an impact. Now, this is not only said by digital solution providers, but is most qualified if it's the users that say it. And that's why the report lists and describes a large and interesting number of use cases from multiple utilities, spanning from north to south, east to west, going down to district heating, district cooling in Saudi Arabia, which I think is adds some kind of exhaustivity to the report itself. So this report has been out since the Euroheat and Power Congress in Turin in May. If you haven't downloaded it, please do it. It's easily accessible from the Knowledge Hub. We also had multiple chances to present it at the recent, I mean, throughout the summer, in a number of posts and communication pills. I presented it at the Smart Energy System Conference in Copenhagen. Today's webinar, in a way, is a landmark point in the discussion of and the exploitation and dissemination of this report. But also put in your agenda, there's going to be another chance to discuss on this, while ironically, like 2019, together with our work, the International Energy Agency was also working on digitalization, district heating and cooling, and they will release the results of their 3 years work on digitalization as enabler for high-performance district heating system in Berlin, 20th and 21st of November. I will be there, but you will also find a very large perspective of research institutions as well as industrial institutions, as it was our focus here. So there is still a lot of debate going on, and so let's do our part today. But this is an ongoing journey that we are embarking together. I hope this was good as an introduction. Of course, we can be reached for any question, but Aurelie, I think this goes back to you, because I believe that the panelists' view will really add the salt and pepper to what the introduction I put.
Absolutely, Matteo. Thanks a lot for this very clear presentation, and for reminding our audience, of course, that this report is accessible freely to everyone and can be downloaded on our website. So you mentioned in the end the perfect transition also to the start of this panel discussion, because you did say that in the end, one clear finding is that we have a very broad amount of processes in a way that can be improved with digitalization, and we will deep dive into it right afterwards. But maybe just a bit of a warm-up for everyone looking at the report. I mean, all of you were involved in a way in this report. I mean, did you read it? What is your key takeaway from this report before we start the conversation? Who wants to start? If there is any key takeaway, or we just go with the flow and the presentation. Yes, Daniele.
Okay, I found very interesting the report, and quite of kind of inspirational, because so far we mainly focused on the production digitalization and not on the customer digitalization. And so I think that the report is giving a glimpse of the full potential about digitalization. And it is clear that the last level, the next level, is the customer digitalization. And also especially about how to manage the heat demand side. And so heat demand side management, that's very important, and that's really the next frontier for us. And also are clear the main barriers to cope with to reach the target. And what the most interesting finding I found in the report is the difference between implicit and explicit participation. And so if commonly we believe that the active participation of a customer is the key to make him understand how to behave better on the network, otherwise it's clear that the active participation won't be the driving solution for the demand side management. It's clear that remote control will be the solution. And so it's that we have to look for, and it's even more challenging than active participation.
Thank you for that. I think it's a good point, and we will come back on this, because of course, I mean, as you rightfully pointed out, digitalization, it's upstream and downstream. We will try to explore both pillars today, and yeah, there is always the question when you look at the consumer on how you involve them, how you bridge this gap that Matteo was referring about. So we will discuss that for sure afterwards. Going on the side of the field, basically. So digitalization is supporting the improvement of a broad amount of processes on district heating and cooling. So maybe I will already hand over to one of our panelists, Tom Digit, distribution manager at Viborg Heat. And I just realized, I hope I do pronounce your name correctly. But yes, you have been already driving the implementation of digital solutions in Denmark on your own network. What are the lessons learned? What are the benefits that you have been retrieving from it?
Well, I think that one of the benefits that we have is getting lower return temperature from the customers. So that's our main benefit. But I'll try to tell you a bit about it in the next couple of slides. Before I start, I'll just say that Viborg Heat is a company of 12,000 customers. So in European standard, a small company, but in the mid-sized company. And today, of course, I'll talk about the demand side. We started quite early with the smart meters in 2000, where instead of just being billing meters, also being meters that we got data back to the company from. We also introduced a web page to our customers at that time, so that they could see their data, what was their consumption and what is their return temperature. The smart meters has always been used to give feedback to the customers on high return temperature, so that the customer would know that the return temperature was too high. In 2002, we also introduced a motivation tariff, and I think that was actually a game changer to get the consumers aware of them having a high return temperature, and that they actually will get a bill if the return temperature is too high, and that make them focus on it as well. We get the data more and more frequent over the years, started with quarterly data, then monthly, and today daily, and is beginning to have hourly values at some customers as well. So we get the data quite frequently. But when we went from the monthly data to the daily data, we thought in the company, what on earth should we use all that data for? Because we could see that we could give quite good feedback to the customers on the monthly basis data. So why have daily values as well? But we also introduced this web-based tool to the customers, so that they could actually set up a notification system, so that they would get a notification if the return temperature was too high, and also if the consumption was out of bounds for the budget on how much they should use. So instead of waiting for us to give them a notification once a month, they get it on a daily basis, so that they can actually do something about it when something is going wrong in the system. And also they can go into this system and see, is there anything happening when I turn a valve or something else? The next day they can see if it had helped on the system. So I think the customers is using the data as well. We can also see that they are calling in if data is missing one day. We have a couple of customers in the phone saying, well, why haven't you updated the web page? Then in 2017, we also introduced a rental unit where we connect it to the internet, so that we are able to have data from it, but also control the units at the customers. Here we have continuous data from it. We also use the data in our SCADA systems to optimize the distribution network. And we can see that we can also in the future use this for peak shaving, when if we can make a tariff for the customers saying, well, if you allow us to control your temperature with 1 or 2 degrees in the peak hours, then we can turn down the demand at the customers. So I think that demand side data, we can use that for a lot, but also the customers can use it to get in control of their home and see what is going on. Because if we don't push some notifications, they don't really realize that something is wrong. We also made this model on 8 steps for lower return temperature, where some of the precondition is that you have the smart meters and some kind of temperature optimization tools to be able to lower the temperature in the network. We need requirements for the customer installation, so that every new installation that is put up is with the low temperature standards. This tariff to motivate the low return temperature is a very important tool to have if you go into lowering the temperature, because otherwise the customers won't even do anything, because what's in it for them. but the motivation tariff is one of the key here. Then this rental unit has shown to be a very important thing as well to lower the temperature. And also you need to have service agreement or a team of energy consultants that the customers can contact, and then send out notification based on the data from the smart meters, so that customers is getting aware of something is wrong. If they just see the bill, they won't notice it if there's a small extra bill on this return temperature. But the notification, we can see that there's a very high impact. Nearly 80 or 90% do actually do something about it when they get the notification from us. Then when we start sending the notifications, then the energy consultancies gets to work, and we also need to make some agreements with the large building owners that has to pay the investment, where the tenants get the benefits, and then back to notification. So it's an ongoing job to get the return temperature down, but it makes it possible to lower the supply temperature if you're in control of the return. Then just a few on what we have actually achieved by it. We started in 1995, where the board set some goals to get down to 70 in supply and 40 in return. At that moment, it was 95 and 60, but it didn't really start before 2002 to get the real lowering of the temperature. But as you can see on the map here, where we have shown every meters, the supply temperature is quite easy to see that we have reduced that, but also the return temperature has been lowered. Here in 2019, we still have some of the customers in the top of the graph is that we still need to get them to lower the return temperature. It's not necessarily the same that it was in 2013, but we can see that there's still a potential of going lower. Also, the temperatures on an average monthly basis is shown here, where we can see that from 2002, when we introduced the motivation tariff, to 2007, we dropped 10 degrees in both the supply and return temperature. Then from 2017 to 2020, we dropped 8 degrees more in supply temperature, and it's down to 65 degrees today. And the return temperature is at 40 degrees, a bit higher in summer, but that's something that we are working on. But if we look at it in 2022, we have 60 gigawatt hours of heat loss. If we calculate that back to the temperatures that we have in 1995, we would have had, can't see it here on my screen, but 92, I think it is, gigawatt hours. So it's a 35% saving on the heat loss, and we can see that we actually have the same saving on the flue gas condensating on the gas boilers. But we are in a process of electrifying our system with heat pumps and electrical boilers, and there the temperatures will have an even larger impact on the savings. So that is what we have achieved here at Viborg.
Impressive, Tom. Thank you for that. So really to have created this interface with the consumers also through the rollout of the smart heat meters, I think it will be interesting also as well to discuss a bit the operationalization of all of that. So how did you manage to roll out those technologies? That will be for afterward. Maybe just a tiny question for you, Tom. So we can see it's a journey for you. What are the next steps? Do you have plans to further digitalize your network with other type of tools? Yes?
Yes, we do. We have just started a project with Gradient to use all our data to optimize in the beginning our distribution network, but the Gradient system, that is really all the system in one tool, so we can use it for consumer optimization for the distribution network, and then also for the production side. So yeah, a system that we are looking forward to see if we get the result that we expect from that. We have also begun to use the data from the customer installations into the distribution to optimize pressure in the system, where we in the early days had only pressure points in the network. Now we have it all the way at the customer, so that we can get the pressure even lower than we had before, with savings in both return and electricity for the pumps as well. So we are definitely going more and more digital in Viborg, and I could talk a lot about what we have in both distribution and production as well, but today it's only demand side I have prepared.
for the presentation, but we can discuss all the other aspects, and thank you for that. So it's an ongoing journey. Good to hear. It confirms a bit the feeling that we have also from the ground. So you were more indeed presenting us the perspective with creating this interface with the demand side. Let's go rather upstream with you, Daniele, with the feedback from what A2A has been achieving in Lombardia. If that's it, yes.
Yes, thank you. And so I'm okay. The most relevant experience we have, I think, is about the generation side and also the network planning design. And so is the most relevant experience is now influencing our day-to-day basis activity. Of course, we are working on the customer side, and there are task force groups. They are trying to understand how to manage the data from some smart meters. But so far, we did a good experience about power generation, heat and power generation on the district heating power plants. And so the first experience I would like to speak about is the implementation about a heating production optimization software in complex plant. And so, for instance, we did in Canavese power plant. Is a power plant. In this power plant, there are 3 CHP engines, 2 heat pumps, thermal energy storage, an electrode boiler, and a natural gas boiler. And so what this software is doing, this optimization software is doing is accordingly to the heat demand forecast, electricity market prices, natural gas cost, CO2 cost, and all the constraints. Constraints mainly, they are related to keep the efficient district heating, is running the system and is choosing whether to switch on and off units and the load of the units itself. And so at the beginning, we saw that the actual operation compared to the optimization, it was rather different, as you can see in the graphic below. And so we decided to implement the system, and now the system is automatic. And so at the beginning, the system was just giving to the operator information whether to switch off and on units and the load of the unit. But then it was good, the system was good, and so we implement the full automatic mode. And so actually now the system, the optimization system, is automatically switching on and off the units and also choosing the load. And so the operator is not anymore sending control or just a few control to the system. Is full automatic. So this is really very important for us, especially in Milan, because in Milan it's a fast-growing system, and we have within a single control room we are managing, I think, more than 20 power plants, and so it's important to reduce manpower for controlling power plants, and then so people maybe they can have more time to look for more power plants in the same working day. So this has been a relevant implementation in our pipelines. The second example is how we are now planning our network expansions. And so we were used since some years ago to assess the market from a public database of heating system. In Lombardy is public. And so what you can see on the left is the potential market. And in potential market, we will have it looking into without this software. But then we feed the software, the optimization software, with the potential market, and the optimization software is integrating the thermal hydraulic model and also the economic parameters. And so the output of the model is the economically viable market. And so the model is maximizing, optimizing the net present value of the investment. So that's very important for us. And as you can see in this slide, the difference of from potential market to economically viable market is significant, especially in a city as Milan, where the density is very, very high, and the district heating is covering now just a little bit more than 10% of the potential market. And so we are used on the day-to-day basis for most every business models about network expansions. We are used to implement a business model with this kind of software. So it's very, very, very important for the network planning. And a third implementation we did, it might seem easy, but it is not, because I'm talking about Brescia. It is the oldest district heating system in Italy. It has been built since 50 years ago. And so we implement an in-house heat demand forecast model based on decades of experience and linear regression of multiple weather parameters such as humidity and irradiation, temperature. And it was quite good with an average error of 12%. That is not that much. It seems much, but it's not. But then in 2020, we implement an artificial neural network model, is artificial intelligence, that was the output was the heat demand forecast. And so the first result is that the average error dropped down to 6%, so it's half. And compared to the amount of yearly amount of energy, it's a lot of energy savings, because in the heat demand forecast we reduced a lot the error. But what happened in the last year? It has been the energy crisis due to Ukrainian war. And so as you can see in the two heat demands, these are two heat demands curve, actual ones from before the energy crisis, and so in the winter 2022, and then during the energy crisis, winter 2023. As you can see, there is minus 70% of energy with the same average temperature outdoor. And this is significant. And also the shape of the curve has changed, is more sharp. But with an in-house model, it was impossible to adapt the system because it needs a lot of data and a lot of experience. But with this artificial intelligence, it's quickly adapt. And then we still have a good heat demand forecast system. Without this system, it will be really difficult to follow properly the heat demand of the customers. And so we keep optimizing the system thanks to artificial intelligence.
Very, very interesting, Daniele. I think it complements greatly what Tom presented, because you have on the one hand, indeed, the significant efficiency gains that Tom referred to with the reduction of heat losses. And then you touch upon in your presentation, I think, three very relevant aspects of the type of improvements that we need to look at as a sector, the ability to cope with the increasing complexity. So what you referred to in terms of the optimization software to be able to play with all those power plants and kind of a limited manpower. The network planning, which is also extremely relevant, as we are indeed in a phase where in a lot of cities, we are expanding or refurbishing or modernizing, but also we see that new networks are growing in a lot of countries. And so it's interesting to see that digital solutions can also help identifying more clearly what is economically viable, and therefore optimizing this process. And this last aspect, of course, very important, the resilience of our networks to unforeseen external shocks, which is something we know in the energy sector is probably going to increase in the next years, the lack of predictability. So very, very interesting. I see that I have a question in the chat for you. So maybe I will pick it up now. So question from the audience: how long in advance can you forecast the heat demand? Several days or weeks?
We have several systems. This one, ANN, is one of them. We are using now multiple systems, and we look in main of them. And so they are different kind of artificial intelligence type. But I think the one is looking more forward in time is 1 week. Is 1 week. But the one we are using, I think, is day to day, or 2 days in 2 days.
All right. Yes, Matteo?
May I add one thing?
Yeah.
We all know that demand is heavily affected by temperature, amongst other meteoric variables. And this means that the short-term optimization will be as good as possible if good weather forecasts are available. So I actually believe that the short-term forecasting tends to be reliable within a span of 3 or 4 days to be very, very accurate. And then with a level of accuracy that may fluctuate a bit more, we can look at longer periods, up to 1 year if we look at climatic forecast, but that's a really completely different range of algorithms. But yeah, of course, I mean, given the inputs, we must take into account that good weather forecasts are one of the key elements for this. And if I may add one other thing regarding production optimization, I would stress one point which was implicit in what Daniele showed, but I believe it's relevant to say to the audience, which is the interaction with the electric markets. You may have seen that the Canavese plant has a mixture of CHP, heat pumps, and heat boilers, which means that there is a very strong interaction with the market where prices fluctuate on an hourly basis. So the capacity to optimize production, take into account how the system will impact and interact with the electric market, maybe looking for and aiming to optimizing margins together with security and resilience is something that this kind of tools can do, and that gives even more importance to the automatization that Daniele mentioned.
Yes, thank you, Matteo. I wanted to also ask a question to Tom with regards to consumer engagement, but maybe quickly I see another question for Daniele, if you can reply to this quickly. Did you publish the methodology and results of load prediction?
The results, I mean, if you mean the comparing about actual and yes, we did it. The results, we did it in the first 4 or 5 months, I think, before to implement the system. And of course, it's strongly depending about the electricity price. About the advantage, we saw, okay, this power plant is producing roughly 150 gigawatt hours to 200 yearly. And the advantage was from 10 to 100 kilo euros per month. That was the economic advantage. And of course, it is helping us to keep the efficient district heating, and so all the other economic advantages. But that was more or less the advantage we estimated at the beginning. Then we stopped because we start to operate the power plant just with optimization, and so we are not now comparing the two ways. Mm-hmm. But at the beginning, the advantage, yes, was more or less the advantage.
Thank you. I think if there are more specific questions afterwards, of course, we will give you the contacts of every speaker if you want to really deep dive into what has been done. But also going back to you, Tom. So I think also Matteo complemented very well with the benefit, at least in the production end, to also show how digitalization is really helping as we have this stronger interface with electricity. I wanted to ask you about another important political aspect that we do see in Brussels, which is consumer transparency and consumer protection in a way. So as district heating and cooling is benefiting from a growing attention, we get stronger and stronger demands from policymakers to engage our consumers, to give them clarity and visibility, so that they are also protected with regards to the price, and they can understand the prices and create this relationship with the utility. Is that what you have achieved? I mean, from your perspective, is it one of the benefits from implementing that at Viborg Heat?
Well, the data definitely makes it more possible for the customers to see what is their consumption on a daily basis, and to see what is their usage. Do they do it right? But I think a lot of it is also in how we invest in new production facilities, and to see how that makes the bill cheaper or more expensive. I think in Viborg we have quite a strong transparency to the customers. They can see every board meeting what has been dealt with there. But I think the data shows that the customers is interested in optimizing their side of the system as well. As I told, they actually contact us if they can't see the data that they get, and we can also see that with the rental unit, they actually want us to take care of the system. They don't want to control it themselves. They want us to be able to control it, and they expect us to contact them if something is wrong, and we can't do that if we don't have the data. So I think in Viborg, the customers, they are quite secure with us having the data in-house to optimize their installation and giving them notifications.
So you say they come to you, they interact, asking for if the data is missing or not. So what are the key benefits that they get then? As you said, it's lower price mostly, the possibility to have more attractive prices?
Yeah, we have made a long period of telling them why the return temperature needs to be lower, because that optimizes our systems, giving them lower prices at home. In Denmark, we don't have an overhead on the price. We need to lower the price next year if we make some optimizations. So every dime that we save goes back to the customers in Viborg. So we can say that the return temperature in the distribution network and the flue gas condensating, that is where the benefits comes. But we can also see, if they do something on the return temperatures, nearly the same savings we can see in the house in lower consumption of energy. Because poorly managed installations, that gives a higher demand for heat in the house as well. So also optimization in the house is possible with this data. And when they have the data, they can also act on it. And we have notification systems where they can get a notification on text or the e-box saying you need to do something, where we have some couple of advices on what can be wrong and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they benefited from it. And also we have this motivation tariff that directly gives them an extra bill or a discount, whether the return temperature is too high or lower. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you foresee, I mean, it may be a silly question, but before we go to the next part of the conversation, you know, on the electricity side of things, sometimes when you look at the electricity sector, you really have this view of the smart consumer that can really play and balance the consumption between his electric vehicle and maybe the heat pump and all those different appliances and connected appliances in the house. I mean, how smart can the district heating and cooling consumer be at the end? What is the vision that we have of a digital DHC consumer? If Tom or someone else can reply to that. Yep.
Yeah, I would say we see in larger builds where we don't have a heat meter for every apartment, that we can also see that the heat cost allocators in every radiator, that can also be used to optimize the house. So being able to see data further in the house can also make sense for the manager in the house, trying to optimize, telling the customers that they need to use every radiators to have a sort of efficient system as possible. If they don't have the data on the radiators, they can't really see that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. Are there any burning comments from the co-panelists before we move to the next set of presentations? Nope. It seems okay. Perfect. So I think, or I hope that at least we have totally convinced our audience with regards to the why you need to digitalize your district heating and cooling infrastructures and the benefits you can gain. But now we need to cut directly into the meat and look at the how you do that, because of course the benefits may be multiple, but it's also a question of how you can implement it on the ground and the potential requirements you need to be aware of. So here we have two presentations of different countries as well, which have been implementing and rolling out those digital solutions, and a bit of lessons learned when it comes to the challenges, the difficulties that may have been encountered, or at least the processes that had to be followed. So I will start with you, Ines, with your return on experience from Austria. I don't know if you can pass the slides now or if I need to do it still.
I think I can do it right now, but
let's try. Otherwise,
let's try.
Otherwise, I can do. You did it now?
No, I didn't do it, but I can do it now. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Perfect. So thank you very much. I'm on the phone and on my laptop, so it's a little bit, I had some technical problems today. So I'm happy to be here.
That's the most digital you can get.
Yes, and I'm happy that you can hear me now. So thank you very much. Yes, I have some slides now without any animation because we thought I'm just on the phone. So I hope it's interesting anyway for you if there are no special animations. So I'm from the Wien Energie. I'm from Vienna, and just some bullet points on the district heating and district cooling system in Vienna. So I think we're one of the biggest district heating operators in Austria. So we have about more than 1,200 kilometers of piping, and we're providing heat for more than 400,000 households and 7,000 business customers. So we have a lot of families and people we want to make happy and want to make sure that there is no cold living room during the winter. We also have a district cooling system in Vienna. It's growing, it's fast growing, so we have a growing rate about 50% per year. And we've planned to make an interconnected network in the year 2025. For now, we have different smaller networks around Vienna, around the city, and we want to interconnect it in the next years. So, I think we all know the why. Just one slide, why we have, the big challenge to lower temperatures. Here's one slide from the Wien Energie. I'm sorry, it's in German, but I think you can follow it. It's the purple part is the district heating and electricity production in Vienna. And yes, the plan is to become nearly zero CO2 emission at these sectors. So it's a big challenge, as you can see, from 2019 or 2030 to 2040. So yeah, it's a big challenge for us to work on that topic. And if we look into 2040, if we use a time machine, then hopefully we all we can we reach this goal. So in 2040, if we can reach this goal, and unfortunately you don't have the animation right here, the blue ones are the things we maybe have in 2040. But to be honest, at the moment in 2023, it's a big challenge, I think, the topic decarbonization. I mean, for us in Vienna, because we don't have information of every substation or station at a customer. We don't have digital twins of every network in Vienna. We are planning a lot of projects on geothermal energy. We have some heat pumps which are providing heat for the primary network. In Vienna, we have a primary network, a big primary network, and a lot of small secondary networks. So it's quite a huge challenge for us in Vienna to get all the information we need, as Tom mentioned before, so that we can act in a proper way. Because the district heating network in Vienna is historically grown, so we have some stations which were built in the 70s and some stations that were built in last month or last year. So there's a huge difference or huge gap between the technical standard of these stations. So I picked up three maybe interesting topics today. One is about a pilot project we did with digital twins. A second one is a pilot project according predictive maintenance, and also the topics around smart heat meter. And maybe we then can discuss about our challenges and the problem we were facing during this project. So something I've learned in the past is that if you look on the left side of the slide, we already have a lot of data, but most of the data we didn't use in a proper way in the past. and sometimes we're missing some data. So we used, for example, LoRa or narrowband IoT to collect new data and also to use existing data. For example, using Kafka streams to get in, let's say near real-time information of our SCADA systems, and to use it in a Cloudera cluster and in Microsoft Azure to collect all the data and to make it usable. So the second part, if you have a lot of data, is then to make it usable. So you have a lot of work to do so that the data looks the way it should look like. Let's say it that way. So data quality is a big challenge we are facing, but we made it through the last years to use our data and to get information for the maintenance team, but also for the efficiency team. And we had the possibility within our pilots with all the IoT sensors to get more information of the data and lower system temperatures. We did it by hand in the first step. It was in 2019. And then we've seen that we have a big opportunity to lower the system temperatures, and we started using the data in a more optimized way, so that we can scale it up and use it in much more networks. And therefore we also work together with Gradient. We started with one district heating network in 2021, and we were able to run the digital twin in a live mode within 6 weeks. And that's quite fast for a big company as Wien Energie, because there are many challenges or problems we were facing just to do something like that. And now I think last month we started with the first digital twin on one of our district cooling networks, and we had some problems we were facing, but a lot of positive things we learned, and also we made real. So we could lower the system temperatures in the digital twin networks and without any problems at the customers. So that was very interesting for us. And at this point, I will stop my slide so that I don't take time from the other discussion colleagues who want to present anything else. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to discuss with you.
Thanks a lot, Ines. I think we do have some questions already from the audience, so I will hand it back to you directly. So Ivo is asking, I noticed that the CO2 reduction goal for 2030 is relatively little. Could digitalization make a difference to raise the decarbonization ambitions towards 2030?
That's a good question. 2030 is in 7 years. So I hope so, to be honest. We've planned to scale it up, and I hope that it will help us speed up and that we're faster than this line here. But there are also a lot of problems we are facing, to be honest. But I think without digitalization, we won't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's true. It's always, we always think of 2030 as a faraway milestone, but it is only in 7 years. And in fact, we are now much closer than 2024 than 2023. So we're more talking 6 years than 7. And it's true that we are looking at systems where transformation takes time. I mean, maybe it could be interesting just looking at the rollout of digital technologies on your own network. How long did it take to put in place the tools that were needed to harvest the data?
I mean, to be honest, we don't have a digital twin of every network in Vienna. So we are still in a phase where we have to roll it out. And it took us quite long, but I'm really happy that we started in 2018 because we made a lot of mistakes, and now we're much faster. So we accelerated our the way we work. We're now in the cloud, and it's much faster. And it's also interesting to see how the culture in a company is changing. For example, in 2018, when we started with the project, it was very difficult to talk to our IT team and tell them that I want to go into the cloud. So there was no way to do it. And 3 years later, it was easier. And now everyone is talking about doing it and why we're not doing it. So I think it's very important. I think we are able to speed up, and I think we need to speed up because, as you mentioned it, we're nearly 2024, and we have to do anything. So it took us. I mean, the digital twin with Gradient, we were quite fast. So we had it within 6 weeks, the first digital twin. But to have it within 600 networks, it's another challenge, to be honest, because we have old databases, we have old data structures. So that's a big challenge. And to be honest, we're missing data engineers. So that's a huge challenge for us.
Okay, so if you're a data engineer looking for a job on the webinar's audience, feel free to contact Ines right after the webinar. A lot of points that you raised, Ines, and we will come back to them afterwards. Data operability, data quality, cloud or not. And we knew it would come, but there is also a question in the chat about GDPR regulation and how it's kind of impacting the whole business. But before we go into this, I would like to just close the loop of presentation, which is the last but not the least, Bertrand Guillaumeau from Dalkia. If you can give us a bit your own feedback from the ground and the projects that you have been developing with regards to digital technologies.
Yes, so I'm Bertrand Guillemot. I'm Innovation Program Director at Dalkia. Dalkia is a French company involved in energy services management and as well decarbonization, and so energy services provider. We operate about 350 district heating and cooling, and have a quite huge experience in decarbonization. And what I would say is, as said by Matteo, digitalization is not only a buzzword, it's mainly and firstly meant to improve our operation and having a strong commitment of our customer as well. The key point in our operation is having clear set of data and that can be used all along the project life duration. That's what I want to focus on my slide. Next slide, I shifted to move it. We can use digitalization all around the lifetime of the project, from the basic design to the operation, passing through the customer needs and customer transparency. That is a necessity, absolutely necessary today. Across all operation, we are going through more and more detailed usage. The key point is having clear data. We need skilled people to clean the data and having large set of data. 10 years ago, when I was telling to our teams, you have to collect the data, nobody knows what to do with at the end to have a clear vision of what we can do today. Today, for example, that's what has been shown in the showcase we show in Riyadh with the district cooling that we are building. We have built all the system with the BIM systems, building intelligent modeling. And today we are connecting the CCMS on all the data coming from the system to this 3D model, helping all the stakeholder to better understand what happens. There is a large set of tools to be used through the digitalization and a large set of benefits that can be, of course, pure operational and money maker tools, but also customer confidence to improve because they know more how we use the money, how we operate the system, and they can better understand when we explain to them how they can improve their commitments with energy transition policies. Being said, it's never as easy as we would like to, and the operation is still very tricky. The second point I want to focus on is if we want to go through digitalization, it's not because it's a target, it's a mean. It's a mean to share information not only with our customer, but also inside our company and with all the various stakeholders. And that's the second example I want to show to you. It's what we have implemented with 10 years of EDF R&D research program and a little bit also of artificial intelligence. It's also what have been shown with our A2A colleagues. It's a load forecast. It's a load forecast tool that we want to implement all over our operation based upon the data set that we have already collected. All this data can come from public data, the data that we will use with the digitalization. We use, of course, our own data and also rebuild of our data when we mix public data with our own data. The target that we are going through with our Dalkia Eco offer, it's the digitalization offer from Dalkia. It's better managing the mix diversification that it is increasing. Formerly, we were operating gas CHP, a boiler biomass, a little bit sooner, and a gas boiler. Today, more and more, we are using energy storage, we are using heat pumps, we are using geothermal capacity that are not as easy as a gas boiler to be used. And it induces new challenge for us. We will have all the biomass stocks that we will need. Do we need to secure more energy from outsource energy provider or something like that? And that's one of the targets we are focusing on with our forecast load. It will help not only our operational team to start, stop, and better engage their systems. And we are working as well in the full automatization of the system with this forecast load to start and stop the system with that. That's what we have done with in Nanterre. But it's also a shared information that we will share with our customer to show, okay, what will happen? Today we will start the boiler, we will start the biomass boiler, you know what's happening. And also it will help our purchase for or procurement for energy in order to be sure that we will have all what we need in order to serve our customer as best as possible. To be successful, the first point is to share all these targets together to reduce the uses of fossils, improve the digitalization and usage. For that, we have set on a corporate SaaS solution, easy to implement, and we share this new information with all the stakeholders. For us, it's really the key point. Having the data, of course, is a key point, but having the data without a strong wishes and a strong commitment will be useless. And I've finished my presentation at this stage.
Thank you, Bertrand. So indeed, it's not that easy. A lot of things to keep in mind and to implement, but that's fine because I suppose that, of course, also digital solution providers are here to bridge this gap and help also tackle some of the challenges that have been already mentioned. I mean, maybe just a start, because there are 2 points that were brought recurrently by Ines and Bertrand when it comes to the challenges. You both said data that is usable. I'd like to know what is the data that you cannot use, and in the end, why is it not usable? Is it because you don't have enough return, visibility or lead time to compare it with something? What is a data that is not usable, and how do you make it usable?
It's very simple. A single temperature might be a lot of things. You can think that the inner temperature is inside your flats. But if the one is not the right flight, but the flight outside or in the other building, when you are dealing with IoT system and things like that, from time to time, the temperature is not the right one. And if it is not the right one, you cannot serve your customer with the right one. The second step is, especially with meters or things like that, from time to time, you may lose one data. What's happened? Is it your email that it is wrong, or is it just the connection that it is wrong? So you have to check that the data is the right one and the quality of the data is a good one. As soon as you have it, you may start. Of course, artificial intelligence is helping us a very lot in checking the data and improving the data quality.
Is there a simple way to do it? Ines, you were also referring to data interoperability, or I'm sure, Matteo, you have something to say about that as well. Maybe Ines first and then Matteo?
Yes, I think I look at two different types of data, the time series data and the metadata. I have one example for the metadata where we faced problems in the past. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we created a database where all our customer relation management data were saved. But there were no governance how we should save it. For example, if it's an office building, if it's an apartment building, everyone in the company was allowed to use a name he wanted to use for it. So if we wrote apartments the wrong way, or housing or stuff like that, we have a lot of categories. And that's a small example for data quality, because we need to put them on the same, on a comparable baseline, for example. And on the timeline topics, on the time series data, we're facing problems that we have problems with a sensor and we didn't recognize it because it wasn't a problem for providing heat. It was just a sensor that's going in the wrong direction and made no problems. But for example, we want to use it for predictive maintenance, machine learning models, then we can't train the data because the data of the last 5 years is not possible to use, for example. So missing data or peak, stuff like that. So it's cleaning, data cleaning, a lot of data cleaning work you have to do, and use the same name so that you can scale up, for example. Stuff like that. It's simple stuff if you look at it, but in a big way, then it's not always easy to work on it.
And that's why you also referred before Ines to company organization, which is also a part of that. So how you train and you educate your employees with regards to digitalization. Matteo, how would you tackle those challenges?
Well, I think that the definition of data quality includes several elements like accuracy, completeness, reliability, etc. But I think the real rule of thumb is, I mean, we are now getting used within the Industry 4.0 paradigm to get lots of data. And I believe that most companies are becoming full of data. But the truth is, unless you use that data, you will not know if, I mean, the real value of it and the quality of it will not emerge. There's always a phase where you start looking at data and you recognize that that time series is not linked to the right tag, and therefore it's not showing what you expect it to be, etc., etc. And the only way to improve the data quality so that it becomes usable is to actually start using it. So there's a simple thing, which is it doesn't matter whether you just want to visualize things, predict quantities, or optimize systems, optimize your system. The only way to get a decent quality of data is to start using it. You will face that there are problems, you will fix them, and the wealth of your data service will instantaneously start to increase. And then, of course, adding analytics will actually bring the value down to earth. But there's only one way to do it, which is use them. I think that's a very practical but essential point to enter the digital transformation era.
Fair enough. I mean, it seems there's a bit of chicken and egg in there. So you need to start at some point to start grasping the benefits of it. It's not about being smart already. It's about becoming smarter. And I think also the presentation that we've had showed in particular that this is a process, and it's really something where you start to use and leverage the data, and then you get those incremental changes and benefits to your own network. I see, Tom, you have a remark?
Yes, one of the things that we have seen is that we have a lot of data, but it's in different data silos from different companies. And sometimes it can be useful if we could use data from one silo in some of the other systems, like from the rental unit, that we can use that in the SCADA systems to optimize the pump pressure. So sometimes it's also the possibility to use data across of the platforms that we have in the systems. So that's definitely one of the things that we are looking into, how to make data available on all platforms.
Absolutely. So really, again, coming back to this organizational, in a way, aspect to a successful digital transition, which is also the interoperability between departments and segments of a company. Bertrand?
Yes, if I may add something, one of the points that have been more or less mentioned is how to reference the data. At Dalkia, we want to interoperate. One data might be used by a very lot of people. And one of the key points is to know that you have the data on where it is, how it is called. That's a key point, that's the whole structuration of the system. And if you do that, that may answer easier to any LGPD constraint. You know where the data come from, who owns it, and how you can use it. But if you collect the data without this reference book of what is this data, who is it, you may face some issue, especially in the usage, future usage. It will be a strong limitation.
Yes. Thanks, Bertrand, also for bridging with the question on GDPR, because indeed, I think when we look at the growing digitalization of the sector, we see that, of course, one key to do it well is to get more data from the system, all the parts of the system, and more data, of course, from the consumer interface, the building interface. So there was a question in the chat on to which extent GDPR rules are potentially impacting this business. Is it an obstacle, or how do you work with that at all? And I would like to add to that another aspect of the question, which is with regards to the notion that district heating and cooling networks are critical infrastructures as per European definition. That means that with that, they are bound to follow certain requirements in terms of safety, also when it comes to the safety of the data. And for example, a lot of you mentioned that they've been moving to the cloud. Is it something that also we see as we are less connected sometimes to physical infrastructures, or are as the weight of data increases in the way we manage our infrastructures? Is it a challenge? Does it make us less secure? So GDPR, critical energy infrastructure, who wants to start?
About the data infrastructure, whatever it is in the cloud or somewhere else, it's just a question of how you protect it. I'm not so sure that there is any sense in having the data in your own data center or a decentralized one. Where are the data are stored might be a question, but I think that around the panel, nobody has to send the data in China anyway. But after LGPD at Dalkia's side, we don't have so much issues as firstly we're on B2B frame, and we don't have the direct connection with the final user. We can know that there is an apartment number 22, but we don't know who is inside. So we are a little bit less exposed than other parties.
Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that on the panel? Who wants to add to this? Tom, and then Matteo.
I would say that in the case of the critical thing, if somebody is breaching our network and trying to take control, we can control every production and pump facility by hand, setting, if we don't have access to the internet, we can actually control the network out there. Of course, it means that somebody needs to go out there and take control, but we can do it that way around. In the beginning of the GPGR discussions, we in Denmark quite quickly found out that we could use the data from the customers to optimization. So we was not that dependent on getting the consent from the customers on having the data. But when we look at the customer rental unit, there we have the consent in the rental agreement for the customers that we can use the data and also provide it for third parties to optimize their installation as well. So we have a big focus on it, but it's not something that disturbs our day-to-day operation.
Okay, so it's just something to factor in while you operate your network. It's not something that we cannot cope with, basically.
No.
Matteo?
Well, I would just stress the fact that yes, data security and safety is an issue. Luckily, cybersecurity is also growing a lot. I think that no one has the full certainty of safety, but this applies to companies as well as solution providers in the cloud. I believe to some extent it goes. I mean, from our experience, we work with many companies. In most cases, we have seen the development that Ines was referring to, a gradual increase of trust in cloud resources and cloud technologies because of the sheer fact that it looks like I mean, issues are not emerging and reliability seems to be reflected. But I agree that if a customer requires the system to be managed on site, web technologies allow for on-site installation, and we are doing that in many cases, especially, for instance, in the US, where the liability issue is very, very hard. That's a good way to go forward. So it's one of the challenges of our time, but at the same time, especially following what Tom just said, which is if one of these systems may be under attack, there must be a contingency measure and a disaster recovery. But this means that I mean the impacts will be at the most a lesser level of optimization by managing the system manually for a short time period, which is doable and very minor with respect to the advantages of having automatically optimized systems for 365 days per week every year, in my opinion.
Yes. So cyber security engineer is another job we need to ask to the list, recruitment list for everyone, but not a major challenge. I mean, I think it's something that indeed is anyway for all sectors. It's becoming a stronger and stronger aspect to be careful about, because we are all getting digitalized. So maybe also looking at the question in the chat, there is one question about the skills shortage, because a lot of you did allude to that in a way, notably Ines from the organizational side. So Matteo, in your presentation, you were kind of alluding to the fact that demand maybe needed to catch up in a way, and that companies needed to be more secure about the fact that they can become smarter, but can offer follow. Do we have the skills and the scale from the digital provider side, digital solution provider, to cope with potentially a growing demand and a fast-paced digitalization of the sector?
Well, I mean, you asked me first to respond, and growing the company and growing the finding the right resources to grow the company is one of the big entrepreneurial challenges for Optit, as I think it is for most companies here, because computer engineers and data scientists are scarce resources. Yet I think the signals that the market is sending to the labor market are very strong, and they also see that there are increasing numbers of very good people. I think that rather than the sheer skill, I think the other point that needs to be evolved is the actual culture of data management and analytics. And I think this is being tackled very effectively in projects. I mean, we see that we start by responding to maybe one specific issue, and then the utility becomes aware of the opportunities and possibilities of scaling that up, enlarging it, and make it deeper, increase the impacts. So as you said before, it is a process that may be triggered by a specific need in time, but then it has all the potential to grow within companies and organizations. So skills shortage is an issue, I think, at continental level.
Yes.
I mean, one European project we applied for, and we hope to get a response in the next coming few weeks, is actually exactly on a digital skill academy. I would be very pleased to be having a webinar in a couple of years telling you what has emerged on that field. But it is a challenge at the same time. I believe that there are companies that can support utilities entering this magic world, growing the culture and the skill sets, getting good solutions, and achieving results.
Good. So finger crossed also for the project. In the meantime, the European Commission announced as part of the Net Zero Industry Act, where also digitalization technologies are a fully fledged part of strategic net zero technologies identified by the Commission, and they announced they would create a Net Zero Academy to try to bridge the gap also with universities across Europe when it comes to the skills that are needed. So that could be an important entry. For that, I don't have any more question from the chat. I see that, Tom, you have a hand raised. I had maybe one last question for all of you before we wrap up this interesting conversation. But Tom, if you wanted to say something shortly.
Yeah, it was again on how to manage the data in the companies. I think again that we have these very large data silos from different companies makes it's also harder to extract the data and put it into usage. So I think if we can collect the data in one system where we can send out the data to the data platforms that we want to use, that can also be one of the shortcuts to get better usage of the data. So that's something that we are looking into, if we should try to collect it and put it into one data silo instead of I think today we have 24 different systems providing data. So
yeah, at some point interoperability between solution providers will also become a topic, like to harmonize a bit the solutions. Great. It's been it went faster than I expected, I must say. We're already at the end of the webinar, and well, before I thank you for your great contribution, I just wanted to ask you a quick question, maybe 10-15 seconds, but you're all working in the digitalization field. You're all passionate about that. So maybe I would just ask you, in your personal or professional life right now, what is your next step for digitalization? So starting with Bertrand, for Dalkia, for example, what are you working on at the moment, or what from you is the next step of digitalization for DHC in 10-15 seconds? I know it's short.
Continuation. We have still a very lot of work to do, especially because we have a very large panel of activities and sites. So we need to work all together on try to share the same things. The tricky thing is everybody wants to do better than the others. I think that we can do much better if we have the same strategy.
Okay, so developing kind of those pilot approaches that you've been making in some projects already everywhere. I guess that's also something for you, Ines, because you mentioned that not all networks were equipped, but what would you say?
Yeah, for us, I think it's scaling up the solutions that already worked in pilot projects. So that's a big topic we're working on at the moment.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but to equip all the projects with it. Yes, Matteo?
Well, I would say we're eager to scale up, make it happen, and listen to the data silos issue. I think the response is data strategy. We already do it, but we may increase our capacity to respond to data strategy issues to utilities.
That's something that has been made in the electricity sector as well. You had a whole regulation on data interoperability and requirements for data sharing and structuration in organization. That's a tough process to go through, but yeah, maybe indeed something necessary in the future. Tom, what was it your next step?
Well, I think our next step is getting this digital twin up and running, where we have the benefits all the way from the consumer to the production, and then also this getting data available across platforms is also one of the things that we are looking into.
Thank you, Tom. And what about you, Daniele? And yes, you need to unmute.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. And next steps, we are at the beginning. Now there's a task force about how to manage this, how to manage all the data we are getting from smart meters, because we have very old networks and brand new networks, and so we have many kinds of data coming. What's a good thing is that some years we are working on an interoperability platform, and so we are collecting all the data in a single platform. This platform is used by the optimization tools and also about heat demand forecast. And so what I will see in the future is how to cope with the decentralization, in big networks, because if I want to freely use the data from the smart meters, it has to be clear, according to the GDPR, that this is about public interest. But if I have more and more companies, in case of unbundling and decentralization, if I have more and more companies on the same network, I all the time have to be sure that using this data is towards a public interest. And so that's the first thing I think we have to look about, because our system is not unbundled, it's going to be unbundling. And so fortunately we are starting now, and we can start in the right way with the task force is working on.
Okay, that's interesting as well, how the digitalization of your network will have to cope with the evolving regulatory environment and evolving regulation of the sector. I think that's the case in Italy, but not only. We see that happening in Germany, in the Netherlands, so surely something to be kept in mind for companies here in the audience that will engage in this. Thanks a lot, very much to all our speakers. It was a pleasure to moderate this conversation, and I thank you very much. It was extremely insightful, I hope as well for the audience. The presentations will be made available to everyone afterwards, and I would like also to thank the DHC Plus and Euroheat and Power team, which have contributed to organizing this webinar. Special thanks to John Kapetanakis, which has been preparing all of this behind the scenes very thoroughly. So thank you, everyone, and let's continue with the talk actually on site, not online afterwards. But thanks a lot. It was great.
Ciao, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.